Okay, well, if your music collection contains any rock and roll from the past 50 years, you'll undoubtedly have some of this man's work, from Aerosmith to Cheap Trick to Supertramp, Patti Smith, who am I leaving out? John Lennon. Jack Douglas has been at the helm of
Allen Ginsberg.
Allen Ginsberg. Jack Douglas. The Allen Ginsberg Project. I remember that.
That's
that was
right.
good.
Co-producer
Jack has been
Bob
at the
Dylan.
helm of some of the most influential and impactful music. Jack Douglas, welcome to Psycho Babble.
Psycho Babble.
Psycho Babble.
I'm the helmsman.
You are the helmsman. Well, and you know, when I was talking to Peter Asher about this, now, of course, I know what a record producer does, but a lot of people don't. What would you say a record producer does?
I equate it more with like a director of a film.
Okay.
It's like, my job can change from time to time depending on what a project needs. Some projects, for example, the first Cheap Trick album, all I had to do was to whittle it down, because live they were already doing all of that stuff.
Okay.
The only song that has a major production is Mandocello.
Okay.
But everything else, I just wanted to get it down so it would fit on the record, edit it a little bit, and facilitate that live feel on the record.
Okay.
Which I think I did.
Yeah. Now, did you discover Cheap Trick in Waukesha, Wisconsin?
Well, I mean, they were already established in the Midwest as a touring band and a popular one, and I knew about them, but I accidentally came across them because my brother-in-law, said, you got to come see this band, and they were playing at the Sunset Bowl in Waukesha, and it turned out to be Cheap Trick. And I was, so impressed, because their live show, I don't know if anybody remembers what it was like. It was more like a carnival than anything else. I mean, Rick did things like they would guess women's weight, and then a woman from the audience would come up and she'd have to sit on his face for him to guess the weight. And
I want to produce this.
So it's like there were lyrics that had to be changed.
Right.
But basically, that first album is issue based. It has a lot of political statements. We talk about serial killers. We talked about pedophilia. Male prostitution. Those things were never revisited by Cheap Trick.
Right.
But that was the course I wanted to go. Anyway, that's facilitating a band. Other bands like Aerosmith, aside from Get Your Wings, every album after that, they would come to me with a germ. And that meant that it was co-writing and developing and even with Aerosmith, I had to develop a vocal sound, because on the first album, Stephen was singing like this, dream on, dream. Yeah. And it's like he was using a different voice than the God-given gift he had, which was beautiful. And so he got out there to sing a song, and I started singing like this, and I was like, Stephen, you don't talk like that. Why are you singing like that? He goes, I don't know. It's like, I said, let's do this like your normal voice. And boy, when he opened up, it was like, wow. And then I got hate mail after that. After that album came out, when Get Your Wings came out, I got hate mail saying, what did you do to Stephen's voice? I mean, I understand why that would happen. But so anyway, that album they had material for. Every album after that, my job was to jump in, and every other record that I've ever done is varying degrees of capture what they are, or step in and write with them and develop it. So now, that's what a producer does.
Okay, so now my understanding is that you made the leap from engineer to producer on the New York Dolls album when Todd Rundgren was producing. You were engineering, and Todd kind of walked away from the project, and you took over.
He didn't like it. The best part of him not liking it was, Mercury Records thought Todd is like the most popular producer right now. It's a perfect idea, but it's a terrible fit, because you're a guy who loves really smooth, really beautiful production, and basically a bunch of street guys.
Yeah.
Who didn't care about whether they were in tune. When they went out there, Todd turned to me and he said, "God, it's awful." And I said, "It's awful, but in a kind of a cool way, because it sounds like something you've never heard before." There was no such thing as punk.
Right.
There was the MC5. It was, there was some shaking going on, but there was nothing like what they were doing, which is punk and glam and,
Thrash.
yeah. And it was also very, very intelligent, because David Johansen is a super literary person. So the funniest part of him not liking it was when they were out there doing Personality Crisis, and David was in a booth doing a live vocal, and the band's out there playing. And David comes in with the band, and not knowing really how to say he hated it, Todd said, "That's going to be great when we put lots of harmony on that vocal." And David Johansen looked at him and said, "Harmony? Are you accusing me of having melody?" And he was taking the piss, really. That was his humor. But Todd took it seriously, and after that, we didn't see him.
Oh.
He would call.
Gotta go.
He would call it in. "How's it going today?" And what we'd have to do is we'd have to hold off the label. So if the label was going to come by, we would tell them that we had to. These guys are so deep in concentration. If you want to meet them, we'll meet you downstairs or at the coffee shop across the street. And then they would say, "Where's Todd?" "Well, he's up there. He can't go. He can't leave the board. He's busy." And David Krabs, who was managing the band, was covering for us the whole time. So they didn't know. And as a result, when the thing got done, and Todd came in, and we mixed it. Took maybe 5 days to mix the whole thing. And David said, "You're getting a nice engineering credit on it. We're going to put your name on in big letters." So I said, "Oh, that's great. I don't expect any more." And he said, "Yeah, but we know you produced it, basically." Well, I said, "No, Todd gets the P. He directed it. He produced it. He gets the P." He goes, "Yeah, okay." He said, "But it was a madhouse, and somehow it managed to come together."
Well, and the perfect footnote to that story is that in 2007, you then produced what I think is the best New York Dolls album ever made. One Day It Will Please
Yes.
Us to Remember Even This, with the surviving members, David and Sil Sylvain. And that album is a fucking masterpiece. That's
It
a
is.
great
I
album.
love that album.
Yeah.
Rolling Stone gave it. Was the 15th most important album of the year that year. Didn't sell a lick,
Right,
because it was
right,
on
yeah.
Roadrunner Records. So you had this, a literary masterpiece on a heavy metal label.
Right.
So there was no way to really, but we were so proud of that record. And I have to tell you a funny story. And you'll excuse me while I show you this picture. Let me go.
I'll talk it up.
Yeah, go ahead. You talk while I find this.
So those Aerosmith guys, I understand they did some drugs back in the 70s.
No.
Okay.
You know what? The thing was, it was great while it worked.
Right. Did you in fact hang live lobsters from the ceiling?
No, they were crabs.
They were crabs. There's a rumor that one of the guys used to go into the room looking for leftover lines or whatever, so he hung crabs from the ceiling.
With all the lights out.
off.
No, but you see, that was an ongoing war.
Yeah.
There were live crabs hanging from the ceiling. Yes.
Wow.
And that was an ongoing war. But you have to understand what they did to me for it to reach that level.
Right.
They put a mat in front of Studio B, wet it, and attached 110 volts to the doorknob. So I stepped up and hit God damn it. All right, I'll get them for this. So
Crabs.
they would be careful about walking into the room because they were always looking out for electric shocks or something happening. You never expected live crabs hanging in the dock. And there must have been 20 of them, right at face level. You know, a couple of them got away. We found them months later.
And that's how the great Aerosmith albums were made.
So this picture, this is me. That's Bo Diddley.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So
you and Bo Diddley.
yeah, well, David and Sil wanted Bo Diddley to play on the record, on this Dolls album we're talking about. So I said, "Wow, that would be great. You think we can get him?" And he said, "I think we can get Bo. He's kind of a fan. He knows who we are, and if we pay him enough, he'll come." So and this is one of the very last sessions he did before he passed away. So Bo comes up to the studio, and he's got a young woman with him who's his assistant, and I take him out, I play him the song. The song is, so it's right up his alley, you know, right in his wheelhouse. And I play him the song, and he's sitting out in the studio, and he's like, "Oh, what's that?" And some little box, you know, that we were using for, "Oh, you're gonna try it?" Yeah, so I give it to him. Hours and hours pass by. He's just talking to me. He's not playing. Obviously, he couldn't play, but he was avoiding us. He really couldn't play, and he couldn't. Like, he listened to the song a bunch of times, and he would make believe like he was trying to play, and then he would talk about something else. Eventually, every single guy, except for Jay Messina and I, Jay is the engineer.
Right.
They all left. They couldn't handle it anymore. They just left, and they left the check for Bo, whether it was $1,000 or whatever it was, $1,500. And I came out and I said, "Bo," and I think in that picture I'm saying it to him, "Bo, it was a great pleasure. Thank you so much for showing up, and just wonderful." And he said, "Thank you." He was a gentleman. Took the check and he left.
Wow.
And then I picked up the guitar and played over the record, exactly where Bo would have done it. And then the guys came back the next day. They said, "Wow, we couldn't take it more. How did it go?" I said, "Oh, great."
You really brightened up after you left.
Yeah, I didn't tell David and Sil for years that was me.
I'm here with Jack Bo Diddley Douglas. Now, we're here at BEATLEFEST today, and for so many people here, including yourself, the Beatles are more than just another band. Can you give us sort of a brief synopsis of your early pilgrimage to Liverpool?
Oh. I'm getting seasick thinking of it.
Yeah.
You know, I was 18.
Okay.
It was because we were playing in bands and we were so influenced by Mersey Beat and the Beatles in particular that my friend Eddie Lee and Eddie and I talked him into it. He wasn't too sure. I said, "We have to go to Liverpool, man. We have to soak in it. We have to soak in the Mersey. We got to dive into this. We got to go to the Cavern Club." And she's like, "Okay, man, but how are we going to do this?" I said, "Look, here's the cheapest way there, $112, one way, tramp steamer." Tramp steamer? Yeah, so what? So, $112. We had, I guess, maybe another $150 or $200 in British pound sterling. We converted. So we had what we thought was enough cash. We only had one-way tickets. We had no visas. We're just as green as you can be. Nobody on the boat asked us, This was a tin. It looked big in port when it got out. As soon as it got past the Verrazano Narrows, it was a cork in the sea. And on top of that, we were crossing in November. I remember people telling me, now let me get this straight, Jack. You're crossing the North Atlantic in November. Yeah, that's a problem. Oh, God.
In a tramp steamer.
Yeah. So you realize when you get out into the North Atlantic, not only is everything ice, but you have 40 to 60 foot seas. So that means the boat is underwater for a few minutes, and then it's 60 feet above the water. So and it's swayed from side to eat. You waited for your food to come by. You'd sit there. They had rails around it. You ate with the crew, your oatmeal, and then it went. And then some other thing that was yours, maybe your coffee, and then it went. And then maybe a piece of toast, and then you wait for it to come back again. And everybody was doing the same thing. It was hilarious. You walked on the walls. It was so violent that you got used to it. That's setting aside that the first 4 days of the trip, tarantulas were looking for a place to get warm because this ship had come up from South America with bananas. And dropped the bananas in Virginia, picked up bourbon, not to mention that the crew was drunk the whole time on bourbon. I was like, who's in charge here? Everybody's drunk. This is a pirate ship. And it would pull into whatever port they had something for them to do, because it's a tramp steamer. Tramp being the word that you want to. So wherever they could pull in and pick something up and deliver somewhere else, that's where we were. Until finally, after 28 days or so, or 30 days, we pulled into the Irish Sea. We had stopped in Glasgow, and now we were into the Irish Sea. I heard a pirate radio for the first time, Radio Caroline, and there was another one too. There were 2 pirate radio stations. And I was like, wow, this is the biggest thrill. And then finally into a port of Liverpool, and you could smell it. I mean, when you got into Liverpool, I don't know if people like the smell, but to me, it smelled like Mersey. It was basically diesel fuel.
Oh, okay. Oh.
It was the smell of diesel, know. And but I was like, oh, it's beautiful. This is the smell of rock and roll in England. And so we got there and pulled into port, and immigration came on board, and everybody was fine except for the only 2 passengers on the boat, Eddie and I, because they said, what are you doing here? We had guitars and little amps. We've come to play. So I remember this immigration officer had, the English with the school ties. I wanted to strangle him by his school tie. He was such a fuck. Excuse my language. Okay. He was like, and so you have a work permit to play? Some work permit? No. Well, I have a work permit. What do I need to work for? I'm just going to play my guitar. Yes. And he was young too, maybe 30. And you have a return trip ticket, I assume. No, we got one-way tickets. Hopefully we'll fly back,
You haven't heard us play.
Anyway, he said, well, we're not allowing you to land, and when this ship leaves, you're on it. So the ship was in dock 5 days, dockage, and so my friend Eddie looked at me and he said, just picture Laurel and Hardy, another fine mess you've got me into. He was like, and he said, do you realize we're going to be on the ship the rest of our lives? We're just going to be traveling. We'll go around the horn, it's good. I said, no, it'll be okay. I got us into this. I'll get us out. And so that night I escaped from the ship. And in a disguise, I don't know why. The crew was drunk all the time, so I took a crew member's coat, big coat. It was cold out. One of his caps, I pulled it down over my head, and I don't know, for some dumb reason, I got something black, and I put it on my face like I had a beard, where I needed a shave. I don't know. It looked stupid. And I walked down the gangplank. And I looked to my left and right, and nobody there. And there's another ship, along comes 2 merchant marine. They walk down the dock, and at the end of the dock, there's a sign that says immigration that points to a shack in that direction. But they walk straight ahead and walk right out of the gate and into Liverpool. In other words, they're going to get drunk. There's no need for any immigration or paperwork. You'll get drunk, come back, sleep on a ship. Please, no questions asked, and why would you? So I went, hell yeah, okay. So I did the same thing. I walked right through the gate. I'm in Liverpool. Well, had to get a bus. So I took a bus. It said Central Liverpool. I got on the bus. You know, it was like thrilling. I just held my hand out with change in it. The bus driver took it. What I needed, probably more than I. But he dropped me off in Central Liverpool, and there was a record store. I like to romanticize that it was Brian Epstein's store, you know, but I don't know. But it was a big store, and they had just released Rubber Soul that week. That week. So the place was packed. This was their boys. This, you know, it was like everyone in Liverpool had a personal relationship with their boys, the Beatles. So I got the Parlophone record. Oh my God, look at this, a brand new record. And so you could go into, and I had enough to pay for it, and you could take it into a listening booth. It was mono, by the way.
Wow.
It was one speaker, one big speaker, and a booth. It was glass around it, and there were a lot of booths, and they were packed. And when I went in with my record, I got followed by all these other people who came in with me because they wanted to hear it too.
Like your Rubber Soul.
And put it on, and everybody was like, and they were all experts. Like, sometimes I didn't know the difference between who was singing, you know, whether it was John or Paul. Like on the early records, sometimes you just didn't know.
Right.
But they knew.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they knew. They knew everything. They could tell you anything that was going on. You know, and then George and the harmony and those, they were experts. So it's like, wow. And I took my record and I walked outside into the streets of Liverpool and I said, there's no way I'm going to leave this place, man. This is fucking heaven. And so across the street was a newspaper office, the Liverpool Echo. And I said, you know, these British, they love like sensational stuff. So I'm going to go in and tell them my story about what happened to me. And I went in there. I told the receptionist, I said, I'm an American musician being held captive on a ship in the harbor. And she looked at me and I said to her, I know that sounds bad, but I escaped, okay? 'Cause obviously not being held, I'm here right now. I've escaped, okay? She said, the only thing I know that's truthful about this whole statement is you are American.
That much is apparent.
Dad, yeah. So she said, well, I'll get an editor. And an editor came out, and I told him the whole story from beginning to end, tarantulas, food going back and forth, 32 days on a ship. I told him everything, just like I'm telling you. And he said, that's an interesting story. I said, yeah, because, you know, all these English musicians are coming to America. We just want to come over here. Okay, I like it. Are you hungry? I said, yes, I'm very hungry. He said, here's what I'm going to do. I'll take you for fish and chips. You like fish and chips? Oh, yeah, man. English? Yeah. I'm going to take you for fish and chips, and then I'm going to drive you back to the harbor, and you're going to go back on the ship. I am. That's kind of opposite what I was thinking, but the fish and chips sound good. So, he said, no, here's what's going to happen is I'm going to have all the English newspapers are going to be on the ship in the morning, including me. I get the exclusive. Okay, fine. So he took me back. I had fish and chips. He took me back, got off the harbor. I walked back on the ship, and my friend Eddie looked at me like, what is going on here? I said, I brought this album back, and I've taken care of it.
Album.
Yeah, I got to look at a new Beatle record.
Told you I took care of it.
He was like, what is it? I said, everything's going to be fine. He's like, you're out of your mind. And clearly he thought I was out of my mind because there was, at one point, we had separate cabins next to her. There were little cabins, but we were on the boat so long that at one point I took a Hershey bar and I put it on the heater and I let it melt on a piece of toilet paper. And I came running out of the cabin like a madman with a Hershey chocolate and I chased him all over the boat. And when I finally got him cornered, I slammed it all over my own face. And he thought I had lost my mind. Yeah. But I was like, I was bored, you know, you got to do something. That was about 25 days in. So
We should cut to the chase here, and that years later, when you started working with John Lennon, you told him that story, and he knew about it.
I didn't even have to tell him the story. I only, we got deported because we got caught playing, and we went to the Caravan Club constantly. We really experienced Liverpool in 1965, but we got deported, and when John was in a room with me, I finally had the courage to say to him, "I've been to Liverpool," and that got his interest. And he asked me why I would want to go. It's a terrible place. I told him it was because we needed to immerse ourselves, and I was a musician. I wanted to be immersed in Mersey. When he asked, how did that go for you? I said, both good and bad. See, the bad part was that we got deported in shackles. And the good part was I made a lot of noise in Liverpool before I left. And he looked at me and he said, one of the crazy Yanks, you're one of the fucking crazy Yanks? On the cover of the local newspapers, the Echo, we release a record, should be just us on the cover of the Echo. Who's up there? Two crazy Yanks, two Americans. And he was very impressed because he remembered that I had a beautiful black Les Paul Custom on the cover of the newspaper. Right. This was a 55, so it was 10 years old. So it wasn't, but there were no black Les Paul Customs with stock Bigsby's in England. Cool. That really got their attention, and the other guy was playing a Mosrite. It got their attention. Look at these guitars. Look at these fucking maniacs. They laughed and laughed and laughed at us. So it made, anyway, he just thought it was incredible that he had come, of all the places that he ended up in a room with one of these crazy Yanks, and it started a friendship that that went from that day to his very last day on earth.
Right.
I just had to let it go.
Hi, I'm Jack Douglas. You're watching Psycho Babble.